Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. I bear witness that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah Ta'ala, the one who has no partner and no similar, the one who has no length and no width and no depth and no perimeter, the one who is not a volume and is not in a place. And how could he be in a place when he existed before time and space? He created everything except himself, including you and your actions. Nothing occurs except by his will, both good and bad, he destined to happen. He speaks without sound, letter, or language, not Arabic, Hebrew, nor Korean. He's not light, he's not a spirit, he has nothing in common with human beings. He's not in the direction of up, down, right, left, front, nor back. And whatever you imagine in your mind, Allah is different than that. And I bear witness that our noble, unrivaled master, Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is the slave of Allah, his final messenger, and the best of all of God's creations. May Allah unite us with him in paradise and grant us a drink from his basin. And may Allah increase us in patience, humility, knowledge, and comprehension, and help us to put our knowledge into practice and grant us all sincere intentions. Ameen. We're continuing in the book, the Hadrami introduction, Al-Muqaddimah Al-Hadramiyya, which is an introductory text in Shafi'i fiqh. In the text, we have made it to page 3. We have made it to page 3 in the text, where the author, Al-Allama Bafadl, rahimahullah, where he begins a section that talks about using gold and silver. Just so you know, the actual text didn't have titles, but the translator added these titles, and they're useful, mashallah. He put the title, Use of Gold and Silver. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah, to those who salamed me. The translator says, it is prohibited to use gold and silver utensils except for necessity. And right here, the translator left out part of what the original author, may Allah have mercy on him, wrote. So the original author said, it is prohibited to use gold and silver utensils except for necessity. And then the Arabic text has here something that's not translated. It says, and to acquire them. وَاتِّخَاذُهَا. So the author said, it's prohibited to use gold and silver utensils except for necessity, and it's also prohibited to acquire such utensils. Okay, that's it. That part should be here in the book. And then it says, even if as small as an eyeliner vessel. MashaAllah. So when he says here, even if as small as an eyeliner vessel, he's not saying this to give some kind of limit to size. It's just an example. It's just an example. So we're saying even if the thing that we're talking about, the container or the utensil, it's haram if it's made out of gold or silver for you to use it or to acquire it, even if it's something small. And the example he gives is something small. It's like the small stick that people use to put kohol in their eyes. Okay, as you may or may not know, it's sunnah for both men and women to put kohol in their eyes. So it's like an eyeliner. Okay, but it's made out of a crushed stone. It's sunnah to do that. And some people, they use a silver stick to do it with. What the author, may Allah have mercy on him, is saying is that even if it's something small like that, the little stick that's used to apply the kuhul in the eye, if that is made out of gold or silver, it's haram for you to use it. Okay, is that clear? So the first ruling here is that it's haram to use any utensil, whether it's like a container or like a plate, or if it's like, you know, a knife or a fork or something like that. If it's made out of gold or silver, this is haram. So yes, that means your grandmother's old silverware, which might be in your house, it's haram for you to use it. Okay, if it's actually made out of silver, it's haram for you to use. And these rules, by the way, they apply to men and women. Okay, some people might think that since men are forbidden from wearing gold and silver jewelry, but women are permitted to wear gold and silver jewelry, they might think it's some kind of blanket rule where women are permitted to use gold and silver. No. Women are permitted to wear jewelry that's gold or silver. This does not mean women are permitted to use knives and forks and spoons and pots and pans and plates and bowls and pots and whatever else that are made of silver or gold. And he mentions that although it's haram to use these things if they're made of silver or gold, it would be permissible if it's out of necessity. So if you're in some kind of situation where like you're going to die unless you use a utensil that's silver or gold, in that case, you use the utensil because there's a need in that case. Okay, a strong need. And just like it's haram for you to use these things, it's also haram for you to acquire them. Okay, that includes buying them. That includes acquiring them from some other means, you know, like accepting them as a gift, for example. All of this is forbidden. Why is it forbidden to even take or keep these utensils? Because taking them and keeping them leads towards using them. And using them is definitely haram. MashaAllah. I want to make sure this is clear. When we're talking about things that are made out of gold or made out of silver, it's haram to use them. It's haram to acquire them. It's haram to keep them. And the one exception here is that you can use it if it's necessary, like to prevent death. All right, is this clear? Because we're about to switch topics slightly. And because we're only moving slightly, it's something that, you know, a person might mix up if they don't keep it clear in their mind. He says, may Allah have mercy on him, this also applies to what has been strengthened by gold. Okay, when he says strengthened here, he means like reinforced by gold. Okay, sometimes if you have something that's made out of gold or silver, something that's made out of metal, if it gets damaged, like if it cracks, sometimes you need to fill in the crack with metal in order to like seal the crack so it doesn't get wider. Okay, many of you have, I'm sure, seen pictures of the Liberty Bell or even seen the actual Liberty Bell. You know that there's a crack in it. But if you look closely, you'll also see that like some bolts have been placed inside the crack to prevent the crack from getting wider. Those bolts are reinforcing the bell to prevent the crack from getting worse. That's one way to reinforce a metal container. Another way is to completely fill in the crack. Another way is to completely fill in the crack. So now we're not talking anymore about using something that's made out of gold or silver. We switched topics. Now we're talking about something which was not made out of gold or silver, but it got damaged and it was repaired using silver, not gold, but silver. This is what we're talking about now. So let's read. I'm going to read this sentence again. It says, this also applies. What do you mean this also applies? It means the prohibition The rule in the Sharia that it's haram to use something that's made out of gold or silver, or even to take it or keep it, that this is haram unless it's necessity. He says that same rule applies to what has been strengthened by gold. So if you had something, like say you had a mug that was made out of stainless steel and it got a crack in it, and someone filled in the crack with gold, this would be haram for you to use. Why? Because it was strengthened, reinforced, fixed, repaired with what? With gold. Okay, so even if the item is not made out of gold, if it's been reinforced in some way or repaired with gold, then that will render it now haram to use. It says, it isn't prohibited to use that which has been strengthened by silver, unless it is a large quantity amounting to decoration. So he's saying that if you have a metal container that's broken and it was repaired with gold, this will be haram to use because it was repaired with gold. But if it was repaired with silver, the ruling is different. If you repaired that item with silver, then it's going to be permissible for you to use, except in one case. And that is if the silver that was used to repair it was a large amount of silver and it was for decoration. In that case, it's haram for you to use it. What are the other cases? I'm going to draw this up since I got the screen showing. Can someone do me a favor and make the white page bigger? Can y'all see that? I don't know how to make it larger myself, so it's a little bit small on the screen. But inshallah, you'll be able to see what I'm doing. I'm just gonna okay. So what we're saying here is we're saying that the amount of silver that's used to reinforce something can either be a large amount or a small amount. Let's make that something people can read. Okay, so it can be a large amount of silver or a small amount of silver. Then over here, it could be for decoration, or it could be for a need. Okay, so we have these four cases. What he said in the text is, in the text he said that if you're using a large amount of silver, and it's for decoration, okay, so maybe this item did not even need any repair. The silver was there just to decorate it. Or perhaps it needed a small repair, but you used way more silver than was necessary for the repair because you wanted it to look nice. Okay, in this case, what do we say? We say it's haram, in that case, to use that item. Why is it haram in that case? Because you used a large amount. You used a large amount of silver, and it was for decoration. That's the one case where it's haram. That's why if we go back to the book, he says, may Allah have mercy on him, it is not prohibited to use that which has been strengthened by silver unless it is a large quantity amounting to decoration. That's the case where it's haram. Okay, but as you see in this diagram here, there are 3 other cases. So what if, for example, a person used a large amount of silver to repair their container, but there was a need, like the container was broken, it needed repair, and it required a large amount of silver in order to repair it. In this case, we say it is makruh. Okay, in that case, we say it's makruh. So it's not haram for you to use a large amount of silver to repair something if it's a necessary repair. Similarly, it's makruh to use a small amount of silver for decoration purposes. Like if you just wanted to make your container look nicer, so you put a little bit of silver on there. Okay? This is also makruh because it's a small amount. It's a small amount of silver. So it's makruh, not haram. What did he say in the book? The case when it's haram is what? When it's a large amount of silver, that's there for decoration purposes. As for this last case, if you use a small amount of silver and it was needed, like it's there to repair, you only use enough to fulfill the need, and it was a small amount of silver, in that case, it's not haram and it's not even makruh. In that case, it's not haram and it's not even makruh. This is permissible. Okay, this is permissible without being makruh and without being haram. Are we clear on that? I don't know how many of us use metal containers and have to repair it like that, but this is the rule. So inshallah, it's clear. Now we're going to switch topics again. No, this is what's tricky about this book. He goes from, sometimes he talks about a whole topic with one sentence. He summarizes the whole topic in one sentence. Then the next sentence is a whole different topic. So we went from talking about using things that are made out of gold and silver to then moving things that have been repaired or reinforced with some gold or silver. And now we're going to switch topics again and talk about that which is gold plated or silver plated. So an item which is just has a very thin, super thin layer of silver or gold around it. What do we say here? It says, it is permissible to use that which is coated. Personally, I would say plated, because what we're talking about here is a thin covering. Okay. It is permissible to use that which is coated with either, meaning with either gold or silver, if the amount is so insignificant that one can't attain anything when melting it down. What do we mean by anything? We mean anything of value. Okay, so gold, as you know, is very valuable. Okay, an ounce of gold is probably like $2,000 or close to it in value. And so it doesn't take much. If you melt it down and get like a gram worth of gold out of that thing, that gram is going to be worth money. Even a half a gram is probably going to be worth money. But it's possible that the amount of gold that you use to plate, for example, a spoon, was such a small amount of gold that even when you melt it down, the amount of gold is like this tiniest bit that you can't even put a price on because it's so little. If that's the case, then it's permissible for you to use that spoon. And this may sound strange to people, but gold, like one of the things that makes gold so prized is that it's very malleable. Okay, it's a soft metal. If you bite it, it leaves tooth marks in it. That's why in the movies, In the movies, if someone wants to test if something is real gold, what do? They bite it. Because if your teeth marks are left in it, then it's real gold. Okay, it's very soft. And because it's so soft, it's very malleable. It can be bent into many different shapes and positions, and it can be hammered to very, very, very thin. To the point where a tiny bit of gold can be hammered thin enough to cover like an entire spoon. Like it's possible that the amount of gold that's plating something would be so small that it has no value, even though it covered the entire item. This is something that can happen. And so the author, may Allah have mercy on him, he's clarifying that if you have an item which has been plated by gold or silver, so, when you look at it, it appears to just be silver. It appears to be gold because it's completely covered in silver or completely covered in gold. And you don't necessarily know that beneath the gold or the silver, it's something else. It's like nickel or copper or something. You don't know that. It appears to be solid silver. Are you allowed to use it? The answer is, if the amount of silver or gold was so small that if you melted it down, it would have no value, then in that case, you are permitted to use it. You are permitted to use that particular item in that case. Are there any questions here about the use of gold and silver? Okay. And maybe you notice that there's a kind of logic to the progression of the chapters here. In the Shafi'i school, it's very common to begin the books in this sequence, because when it comes to the actions of the body, the best of deeds is the salat. So you want to start your book with discussing salat. But salat has conditions. So before you can make salat, there's certain things you have to do. And among those things are what? Achieving a state of purification. So it's standard to talk about purification first and do salat second, because the purification needs to be done first before the salat can be done. And if you're going to talk about purification, well, you start with the very beginning. If you want to make purification, you need what? You need water. So the very first chapter in the purification section talks about water. Okay, and after we've talked about the rules of water and when the water is pure and purifying and when it's been contaminated, when it's pure but not purifying, when we talked about, the different exceptions to something being contaminated with najasa, and we talked about how do you do ijtihad if you're unsure if this water is pure and purifying or if that other water is the one that's pure and purifying. We talked all of these things that are necessary to know the ruling of the water. The next thing he talks about are containers, because water ordinarily needs to be held in some kind of container. So he's telling you whatever container you want to use. If you want to use a bucket, if you want to use pottery, if you want to use a bottle, if you want to use, a skin to hold your water, whatever it is that you want to use, know that there are rules pertaining to the container. And he's saying if it's made out of gold or silver, it's haram for you to use it. MashaAllah. And ordinarily, there's a chapter in the Shafi'i books, and for some reason I thought it was in this book as well. But ordinarily there's a chapter in the Shafi'i books that deals with tanning here as well, because in the past it was common for people to use animal skins to hold their water. And so there's a chapter on tanning as well, because it was a popular container to use. I guess this text was authored late enough that they didn't mention it anymore. As always, if there are questions, type them in the box. We're going to keep moving on to page 4. He says toothbrushing and other acts. So in this section of the book, the author, may Allah have mercy on him, is going to mention some of the things that are sunnah to do, some of the things that are part of the fitrah, which is, the state of dignity that befits a human being. Okay, so he starts with using what? The siwak, the toothstick. He says, may Allah have mercy on him, toothbrushing, meaning using the siwak, using the toothstick, is recommended in all situations. So he's saying at every moment of every day, no matter what situation you're in, it is always sunnah, always rewardable, always recommended to use the siwak. Okay, there's never any time when it's not sunnah to use the siwak. There's never any time when it's not recommended to use the siwak. There's never any time when it's not rewardable to use the siwak. Okay, the siwak is one of the biggest, most important sunnas. Our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to use the siwak a lot. And in fact, even when he was very sick with the sickness that he ultimately died from, a sickness that was very severe, a sickness that would cause him to lose consciousness, and he would, faint and pass out from his illness. When he would return to consciousness, the first thing he would do is ask for the siwak, and he would use it on his teeth. That's the extent to which our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made sure to use his toothstick, that it was the first thing he did when he returned to consciousness. Okay, and he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that if not for the fact that he feared it would be a hardship on his ummah, he would have ordered us to use the siwak for every wudu and for every salat. Okay, so it was mercy from him that prevented this from being an obligation on us. Okay, it was his mercy, his choice not to command us to do it. That's why it's not an obligation for us to do. But in his heart, he wanted to command us. That's how much he wants us to use the siwak frequently before every wudu and before every salat. Okay, it's a very, very, very emphasized sunnah, and it's one that we do not want to leave out. And it's one that if you look around, you notice the Wahhabis, they never do it. The siwak has become one of these things that kind of distinguishes the people who are truly clinging to the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the people who are only pretending to. Okay, we want to be among those that put the sunnah into practice. The sunnah of who? The Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The author continues. After saying that it's sunnah to use the siwak in every situation, he says it's more emphasized in certain situations. What does he say? For wudu. So one of the times when it is especially emphasized to do this beautiful sunnah is in your wudu. And the scholars disagree about when is the part of the wudu when you should use the toothstick. Some scholars in the madhab, they say the time for the toothstick is before you begin the wudu. So they say you use the siwak, and then you say your basmalas and you start washing your hands. Other scholars say no, you say the basmalas and you wash your hands first, and then you use the siwak before you rinse out your mouth and your nose. So there's some disagreement in the madhab about where is the proper place to do it. The stronger opinion is that you do it after washing your hands and before rinsing your mouth. But know that when you make wudu, this is one of the times when it's especially emphasized to use the siwak. What's the next thing that he mentions? He says, salah. So when you're about to make salat, this is also a time when it's especially emphasized to use the siwak. And he says, for every ihram, that means every time you're about to start a salat, it's sunnah to use the siwak. Okay, every ihram. You know what it means by ihram here? It means the opening takbir. The takbir that you say when you begin the salat, that takbir is often called takbirat al-ihram. Okay, he says, for every ihram, it's sunnah, especially sunnah, emphasize sunnah, to use the siwak. So whenever you're going to start a salat, doesn't matter if it's an obligatory salat or if it's a sunnah salat or if it's, one of the non-emphasized sunnas, it doesn't matter. If you're going to say a takbir to begin a salat, it's sunnah for you to use the siwak before that. He also mentions for wanting to read Quran, hadith, or dhikr. Okay, so another time when it's especially emphasized to use the siwak is when you're about to recite Quran, or if you're about to read hadith, or if you're about to do dhikr. These are all times when it's especially emphasized to do what? To use the siwak. When's another time when it's especially emphasized to use the siwak? He says when the teeth become yellow. So if you find that your teeth are getting yellow, this is a time when it's recommended to use the siwak. He says for entering the home. Yeah, every time you enter into your house or are about to enter your house, it's sunnah to use the siwak. When getting up from bed, okay, whenever you sleep, when you wake up from your sleep, it's sunnah to use the siwak. And remember, at any time, you can use the siwak and it's rewardable. He's mentioning now the times when it's especially emphasized to do it. He says, for wanting to go to sleep, okay, just like it's sunnah to use the siwak when you wake up from your sleep, it's sunnah to use the siwak before you go to sleep. He says, and for every occasion, the mouth changes. So any situation in which your mouth is changing, okay, any situation which causes your mouth to change, it's a situation where it's especially recommended for you to use the siwak. That would include, like if you go a very long time without talking, you'll find that after a while your mouth changes. Okay? Or if you go a long time without eating or drinking, you'll find that your mouth changes. Like sleeping, for example. When you wake up from the sleep, you find your mouth has changed. These are all cases where it's good to use the siwak. There are certain foods you can eat that'll cause your mouth to change, like garlic or onion, for example. It's sunnah. It's especially emphasized to use the siwak after that. Okay, any situation in which your mouth changes, it's emphasized to use the siwak at that time. He says, may Allah have mercy on him, it is disliked for the fasting person after the zenith. Okay, so what he's saying here, this is the relied upon opinion of the madhab. The relied upon opinion of the madhab is that there actually is one case where it's not recommended to use your siwak. And that is if you're fasting. If you're fasting and dhuhr time has come in, from the moment dhuhr time comes in until the moment maghrib comes in, according to the strong opinion in the madhab, it's disliked, not recommended, not rewardable, but disliked to use your siwak during that time. During which times? Dhuhr time and asr time. The strong saying in the madhab is that it's disliked to use the siwak at those times. However, Imam an-Nawawi disagreed, and we all know how highly Imam an-Nawawi is regarded. He claimed that it's not disliked to use the siwak, even if you're fasting and even if it's dhuhr or asr time. According to Imam an-Nawawi, there's no time where it's disliked to use the siwak, but rather it is always emphasized to use the siwak at all times. This is not considered to be the mu'tamid, the relied upon opinion, the strongest opinion, but nonetheless, there are many who follow it, and it's quite famous in its own right. So if you choose to take this opinion and use a siwak even in the afternoons while you're fasting, then it's a legitimate opinion, mashallah. Now the author is going to change, after talking about the ruling of using the siwak, that it's always sunnah. except by the strong opinion in one case. And he mentioned the cases when it's especially emphasized to do it. Now he's going to mention how to do it. And the first thing he's going to say is what counts as a siwak? Okay, does it have to be a stick? What exactly counts as a siwak? He says, may Allah have mercy on him, it is achieved by any rough item, but not one's finger. So anything that's rough counts as a siwak. So yes, if you have a toothstick that's made from an actual stick, well, guess what? It's rough, so it counts as a siwak. But if you have a rag that's rough, that counts as a siwak. Okay, anything that's rough counts as a siwak. So if you use it on your teeth and around your teeth, then that means you use the siwak. Even if you have a regular toothbrush of the sort that they sell at the drugstore these days, if you want to go buy yourself an Oral-B and you're using it, scrubbing your teeth with that, that counts as using a siwak, because you can use anything rough. As long as it's rough, it counts as a siwak. He says, but not one's finger. Okay, the condition for something to count as a siwak is it cannot be part of your own body. For you to use a siwak, you need to be using a tool. You need to be using something which is not part of your body that you have grasped, or rather something that's not part of your body that's used to rub on your teeth. You don't necessarily have to grab it yourself. This is the condition for something to be a siwak. It needs to be rough, and it needs to not be part of your body. So if you have some kind of job that makes your skin very rough, such that your finger is rough, some people, because they work as, welders or something, their fingers are like sandpaper. Their fingers are very, very rough. Even if your fingers are rough, you can't just use your finger as a siwak. It doesn't count because it's attached to you. Okay? But, as the scholars say, he could use his buddy's finger as a siwak. His coworker, whose fingers are just as rough as his, the coworker can rub on his teeth, and it counts as using a siwak. And then he could use his finger to rub on the coworker's teeth, because their fingers are rough and it's not attached to their bodies. Okay, so what you should understand from this sentence where it says, but not one's finger, it means you can't use your own finger. Even if it's rough, you can't use your own finger as a siwak, but you could use someone else's finger. Okay? MashaAllah. Next, the author, may Allah have mercy on him, he's going to start mentioning the types of wood that are the best types for the siwak. He says the stick of arak is best. So there's a bush that grows in the Arabian Peninsula. It's called arak. And this is the one usually when you buy a siwak, it comes from the arak plant. They grow all over the Arabian Peninsula. People farm them. They plant them to grow them because there's a whole industry around providing siwaks. It's usually not hard to get a siwak that's made from arak. And that's the best wood to use for a siwak. And it's the one that the Prophet ﷺ used. But after arak, the next best wood to use is wood of a date palm. It says here, then that of palm tree. I don't know if what's meant by nakhla is any kind of palm tree. What I know is nakhla is a palm tree that grows dates, the sort that they had on the Arabian Peninsula. So that is in the number 2 position after arak. The third best type of wood to use for your siwak is the wood of the olive tree. So it's arak, and then date palm, and then olive tree. After the olive tree, the next best type of wood to use is whatever wood has a good smell. And then after that comes whichever wood has no smell. So those are the 5 best types of substances to use for your siwak. Arak, then date palm, then olive, then wood with a good smell, then wood without a smell. He says, may Allah have mercy on him, it is recommended to brush with something dry, moistened with water. So what's the best, how do you use this siwak? Now that you found your piece of wood or your rag or whatever you're using for your siwak, even if it's a toothbrush, how do you use it? You don't use it when it's bone dry. What you want is something that was dry and you moistened it with water, not with your own spit, but you moistened it with water. That's what you want to use as a siwak. It says, and you want to brush horizontally. You want to brush horizontally. I don't have my siwak with me right now. I'll just use this pen. I think someone's about to bring me one. It should be right over there where I pray at. Good, there you go. MashaAllah. So it says, it is recommended to brush with something dry, moistened with water, and to brush horizontally. Okay, so what that means is you want to hold it like this, okay, with your thumb and your pinky below the stick and your 3 fingers above the stick, like that. You want to start from the right side of your mouth at the top and go horizontally across your top teeth. All right, you want to go in a horizontal way, starting from the right and around. And you want to do the same on the bottom teeth. Some people say you go from right to left up top and then go down and you come back on the bottom. But some, they say you want to start from the right on both sides. So you kind of go across and back on top, across and back on the bottom. Whatever you clean it with your toothstick in your mouth, you want to do it horizontally. Okay, that's whether you're wiping along the teeth or wiping along the gums. You want to do it horizontally, because if you go vertically, it damages the gums and it could even cause your gums to bleed. And that's what you don't want, because blood is najis, right? And if you use the siwak vertically right before you pray and you cause bleeding, then what happens? Your salat is not valid. So you want to go horizontally. Okay, horizontally is the way you want to go. It says, except the tongue. So the one part that you want to use your siwak vertically is the tongue. When you stick out your tongue, you want to go long ways on the tongue, not vertically side to side. You want to go long ways when you clean your tongue with the siwak. Are there any questions about how to use the siwak? Okay, well, I'm going to pause or stop here, and we'll pick up the next bit of... Actually, you know what? No, I'll keep going. Inshallah. I will keep going. If you have questions, please put it in the box. It says, it is also recommended. So now the author is switching gears and talking, after talking about the siwak at length, he's now going to mention some of the other aspects of the fitrah, which is the state which represents the proper, befitting human dignity. So one part of human dignity is to use the siwak a lot. You want to do that a lot so your teeth look correct. He says it is also recommended to use oil occasionally. Okay, so one of the aspects of fitrah, one of the things that are sunnah, one of the things that you are rewarded for doing is to take olive oil and to rub it on your skin and rub it in your hair, rub it in your beard. You know, you want to apply olive oil to your skin and hair occasionally. Okay, this isn't something that's recommended to do on a daily basis. All right, you don't put oil on your skin every day. You don't put it in your hair every day. You do it from time to time. Okay, every 3 days, for example. Okay, maybe like twice a week is when you want to do this, using of oil. By the way, it's the same with combing your hair. Our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't used to comb his hair every day. He did it occasionally, which is what is the best way to do it. He says, and to use kuhul an odd number of times. So kuhul, as I mentioned, it's a rock that you pound up into a powder, and then you put the powder on a stick, and you kind of like close your eye on the stick and slide the stick out, and it leaves a nice kind of dark blue colored color on your eyelids. This is sunnah for men and women to do, and it's sunnah to do it an odd number of times in each eye. So you can do it once in each eye or 3 times in each eye. It's also sunnah to trim one's mustache. Okay, when we say trim the mustache, what we mean is you don't let the mustache cover up the redness of the lips. So your lip should have something red. You should have a red color on your lip, and that redness should not get covered up by your mustache. Okay, so for sure your mustache shouldn't be so long that hairs are going into your mouth. But they shouldn't even be covering the redness of the lips. This is what's meant by trimming it. You don't let it get very long. Okay, it does not mean that you shave the mustache off completely. Okay, you see a lot of people in African-American communities, especially if they're Wahhabi influence, what do? They shave off the mustache entirely. Okay, this is not the way the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did it. He had a mustache. He just prevented it from getting long. It says to cut one's nails. So among the sunnas, it's for the person to cut their fingernails and toenails so that they do not get long. Okay, this is something that should be done on a regular basis, but you know, it becomes more emphasized once the nails get long. It says to pluck the armpits. Among the sunnah is to remove the hair from one's armpits. Okay, this can be done in a number of ways. So plucking is one way you can do it. You can pull them out one by one, or maybe you could use wax or something and pull them all out at the, you know, basically at the same time. But it's okay if you also remove this hair by cutting it, like with a razor, for example. This is also acceptable. Also, it's sunnah to remove pubic hair. Pubic hair being the hair that grows around the private parts. This hair is sunnah to remove, whether you're removing it by shaving or by other than shaving. It's sunnah to do it. But the scholars, they say for the pubic hair as well as the armpit hair, that for men it's better to remove it by cutting it with a razor, by shaving. And for women, it's better to pluck. Okay, or some say just to do something other than shaving. So that would include plucking, that would include burning it off, you know, whatever your method is. It's sunnah to comb the beard. Okay, and again, the combing should be done occasionally, not daily. And it's sunnah, he says here, to dye the gray hair with red or yellow dyes. No, what the author, may Allah have mercy on him, said was with henna. Okay. MashaAllah. Yeah. So what's known is that you'd use henna, henna on your beard. And henna, it'll make your beard red or it'll make it yellow. This is what's well known. But what's haram is to dye the hair black. Okay, it's haram to dye your beard or the hair of your head black, to dye it to the color that it was when you were young. Okay, because this is a form of deceit. It makes you appear younger if you do that. And this is forbidden, except, of course, for the one who's fighting in jihad. In that case, it's permissible for him to dye his hair black because You want the enemy to think you're younger. That way they'll be more afraid. He says, may Allah have mercy on him. And for the married woman to dye her hands and feet with henna. For the married woman, it's sunnah. It's recommended for her to dye her hands and her feet with henna. Okay? When they say dye your hands and feet, they mean the entire hand and the entire foot. They don't mean making all these cool designs with the leaves and the, whatever else they draw all up your arm and up your leg and all that stuff that they do now. That's not the way of the Muslims. Okay, the way of the Muslims is for the woman to dye her entire hand in henna. So she has just like she has like red hands and red feet. Okay, this is how it's done according to the Sunnah. And this is done because henna has moisturizing and conditioning properties. This is why people put it in their hair in the first place, not for the color, but because it conditions the hair and makes the hair soft. And this is why women put it on their hands and on their feet, because it's like it softens the skin. Okay, you don't do it just to have some kind of design on your hand or on your foot. MashaAllah. And that's only for women that are married, by the way. The woman who's married, she's the one that puts henna on her hands and on her feet, if that wasn't clear. It says, and qaza is disliked. Qaza is when you shave part of your head and not the other part of your head. Like if somebody, this thing that some of the girls like to do now, where they shave one side of their head, but then they keep the hair on the top and on the other side, and just this side is shaved. This is something that is disliked. Okay, it's disliked in our deen to do that, or to have like a mohawk kind of thing where you shaved almost your whole head and then you just left like a little strip of hair. Things like that, that's disliked. He says, as is plucking the gray hairs and the beard. Okay, so if you're someone who's at an age where the hair on your head or your beard is still mostly black, but you have like one or two gray hairs in it, it's disliked to pluck out those one or two gray hairs. Okay, this is something that's commonly done by the Kafirs. When they see those first couple gray hairs, what do? They pull them out because they don't want people to know they're getting older. Yeah, well, in our deen, this is disliked. Okay, you're rewarded if you refuse to do that. You get rewarded by leaving it in. What else is disliked? To walk in one sandal only. So for someone to walk around outside just wearing one sandal, this is something that's disliked. Unless he has a need to do that, such as if his legs are not equal length. One leg is shorter than the other one, so he wears a sandal on the short leg so that he can walk properly. In that case, it's not disliked for him. But most people, their legs are the same length. So if you wear a sandal on only one leg, then that's going to cause you to walk improperly. Okay, you're not going to walk normally because it's going to render your legs different lengths. He says, or to wear one's sandals while standing. Yeah, he means to put on the sandals while standing, not to wear them while you're standing. Okay, to put the sandals on while you're standing, this is something that is disliked. Okay, the sunnah is to sit down, to put on your sandals. So for those of you who want to fulfill the sunnah, this is a very, very beneficial paragraph. It's just a few sentences that tells you a lot of the things to do so that you can stay, in line with the sunnah and so that you can be in accordance with the fitrah, mashallah. If you have any questions, please drop it in the box and I'll answer insha'Allah ta'ala. We'll pick up next class, insha'Allah, talking about wudu. don't think I saw any questions today. I'm scrolling through now. But, yeah, I guess this one was easy. It was an easy class, mashallah. Someone asked, can you lock your hair? Braids, like actual braids, are something that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sometimes wore. So braids for sure are permissible. The Prophet, however, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, didn't keep his hair in braids all the time. You know, he'd braid it and then he'd take the braids out after a while. Okay, as for dreadlocks, I don't have an answer for dreadlocks. I don't know. Someone said, what about men with, I don't know what a good earring is. Men are not supposed to have earrings. Okay, it's haram for men to pierce themselves. Okay, so if you're a man who already had ear piercings before you became Muslim, just stop wearing the earrings, now that you're Muslim. And as for dyeing your hair, what I know is for women, the woman may only dye her hair with the permission of her husband. And if it's with the husband's permission, then she can dye it any color that she wants. You know, but I've also heard that dyeing your hair, these loud colors that they use now, like pink and purple and things like that, I've heard that this counts as imitating the kafirs, which would make it haram. So if you're going to dye your hair, let it be some naturally occurring hair color of the humans, like black or red or yellow or like auburn. But that should be with the permission of your husband. If you're not married, then you don't dye your hair. How do I say this? If your hair has turned gray, it would be haram for you to dye the hair because it would then be concealing your age, which is like, it's like a betrayal to whichever man is interested in marrying you. So if you're not married, definitely do not dye your hair. If you are married, you can dye it with your husband's permission. And as I understand it, if the husband permits you to do it, you could even dye it back to your natural youth colored hair, even black if your hair is naturally black. But if your marriage ends, you have to let the gray return. Are there any other questions? Are filters on photos haram? Brother, I don't know. High top fades. So honestly, I don't have details on fades, but I saw a video with Dr. Shadi where Dr. Shadi claimed that qaza doesn't apply to something like a fade. Because although the hair is bald, the head has been shaved bald in some parts and not other parts, it was shaved bald in a way that's even and balanced. And it doesn't fall under the category of qaza. I didn't hear this from any of my sheikhs, but Dr. Shadi said that on his podcast one day. So I'll pass that one along. He didn't mention high top fades, though. A high top fade, like kid and play style. I don't know what the ruling is on that. Are there any other questions? A gold crown on a tooth is permissible. Okay, when you're talking about dental work, special rules kick in because your mouth is a very moist environment and most metals will rust. or even poison you in that kind of environment. That's why dentists only work with gold and silver, because gold and silver are not affected by the moisture. So dental work is an exception. You can have silver fillings, you can have gold teeth. Um, if it's dentally, like if it was there for a dental reason, okay, not if you just thought it would look cool to have a gold tooth, so you put in a gold tooth. And if it's like removable, you can't put it on. Okay, you have to just leave it off. If a person has no intentions of getting married, I don't want to answer, sister. What I know is the woman who's not married, she doesn't dye her hair. Are there special cases where she can? Allahu A'lam. Um, the one who's allowed to dye their hair, what I recall, is if the husband requested it. Someone asked in regards to this lesson only. I'm not sure what this question is about. Brother Osman, can you clarify what you're asking? No, you can ask a question unrelated. If I know the answer, I'll answer. If I don't know, I'll say I don't know. Okay, so washing your clothes in the washing machine. According to the Maliki school, the clothes, assuming the water in the washing machine did not change because of any najasa on the clothes, then this means the clothes have been purified. So you can make salat in them, you can enter the masjid in them, you can do whatever in them because they're pure now. Yes, I'm aware that I need to change the battery in the smoke detector. Um, I'm sorry if it annoyed you. It annoys me as well. MashaAllah, I'll get around to it. If there are any other questions, drop it in the box, insha'Allah ta'ala. The old buzz cut that they give in the military, um, according to Dr. Shadi, this would not be qaza. And by the way, qaza is not haram. Okay, the ruling of qaza is that it's disliked. So even if those things counted as qaza, it would not be haram for you to do it, but rather it would be something that the religion encourages you to avoid. Well, if there are no other questions, let's say La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات. رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات. رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات. بارك الله فيكم. I'll see you next week, inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.